You cannot stand there." The words were not spoken loudly, but they carried across the ceremonial hall with the sharp precision of a blade. Nora froze, her hand still resting on the stone pillar at the back of the room, where she had positioned herself as she always did. 5 years. 5 years of standing in this exact spot during every ceremony, every gathering, every moment when the Silvercrest Pack came together to celebrate their strength, their unity, their superiority. 5 years of making herself small, invisible, insignificant. And still, it was not enough. Vivian Ashford stood 20 feet away, her crimson gown flowing around her like liquid fire, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light from the chandeliers above. She was beautiful in the way that weapons are beautiful. Polished, deadly, designed to cut. Her green eyes fixed on Nora with the kind of contempt that had become so familiar, it barely registered as pain anymore. Almost. "I said you cannot stand there," Vivian repeated, louder this time, and the conversations around them began to die down. Heads turned. Eyes found Nora where she stood against the pillar, wearing the plain gray dress that marked her as Omega, as lesser, as nothing. That pillar is reserved for pack members of standing. You know this, Nora. Or have you forgotten your place again? Nora felt her throat close. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, to point out that she had stood in this exact location for 5 years without complaint or correction. But words had a way of dying in her chest when confronted with Vivian's particular brand of cruelty. It was not just meanness. It was artistry. Vivian knew exactly how to strip someone down to their bones with nothing but her voice and the weight of social hierarchy. "I apologize," Nora managed, her voice barely above a whisper. She took a step back from the pillar, her hands clasping together in front of her body, fingers twisting in the fabric of her dress. "I did. Not mean to offend. I will move." She scanned the great hall, looking for another corner, another shadow where she might disappear. The Silvercrest Ceremonial Hall was massive, built from ancient stone and timber that had stood for 300 years. Tonight it glowed with candlelight and moonlight streaming through the high windows. The blood moon ceremony only happened once every decade, when the moon turned red in the sky and the veil between the mortal world and the spirit realm grew thin. It was a night of power, of magic, of possibility, for everyone but her. Move where, exactly? Vivian's voice dripped with false sweetness as she approached, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Several other high-ranking pack members had turned now to watch the exchange. Nora recognized Marcus Blackwood, the Beta's son, and his sister Celeste. Both wore expressions of mild amusement, as if watching a particularly entertaining play. "You are Omega, Nora. You have no wolf. You have no rank. You have no bloodline worth mentioning. You exist here because my father has a soft heart and allowed you to stay when your parents died. But that does not give you the right to occupy space meant for actual pack members during a ceremony of this importance." Each word landed like a physical blow. Nora had heard variations of this speech before, but never quite so publicly, never with so many witnesses. Her cheeks burned with humiliation. She could feel the stares now, dozens of them, weighing her down like stones. "I understand," Nora said quietly. "I will go to the servants' entrance. I can watch from there." It was not really watching. The servants' entrance was a small doorway that led to the kitchens. She would see nothing but stone walls and hear only muffled sounds. But it was better than standing here, exposed and mortified, while Vivian continued her performance. "The servants' entrance," Vivian repeated, tasting the words. Then she laughed, a light musical sound that somehow contained more venom than a shout ever could. "How appropriate. Yes, I think that suits you perfectly. Run along then, little mouse. Go hide where you belong." Nora turned to leave, grateful for the escape even as shame twisted in her gut. She had taken perhaps 3 steps, when the massive oak doors at the entrance of the hall swung open with a boom that silenced every conversation in the room. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees in an instant. Nora felt it sweep across her. Skin like winter wind. Power. Raw, undeniable, overwhelming power that filled the space and pressed down on everyone present. She turned despite herself, despite knowing she should keep walking, keep her head down, keep to her designated place in the shadows. And she saw him. Alpha King Demon Nightshade stood in the doorway, flanked by 4 of his royal guards. He was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block out the light behind him. His hair was black as midnight, falling to his collar in waves that suggested he cared very little for conventional grooming. But it was his eyes that stopped Nora's breath in her chest. Silver. Pure molten silver, glowing with an inner light that had nothing to do with the candles or the moon. Those eyes swept across the room with the lazy confidence of a predator surveying territory he already owned. Alpha King Demon Nightshade ruled the Northern Kingdoms, a collection of 12 major packs and countless smaller ones. He was the most powerful werewolf in existence, the direct descendant of the first Alpha, blessed by the moon goddess herself. He did not visit smaller packs like Silvercrest. He summoned them to his court. Yet here he stood, and Nora could not understand why. Alpha Richard Ashford, Vivian's father, rushed forward with a broad smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Your Majesty, you honor us with your presence. We did not expect you until tomorrow evening for the formal proceedings." Demon's gaze had not stopped moving. It continued its slow sweep of the hall, taking in the finery, the decorations, the assembled pack members in their ceremonial best. When he spoke, his voice was deep and smooth, the kind of voice that rumbled through your chest and settled in your bones. "I decided to arrive early. The blood moon calls to us all, does it not? I thought I might observe your ceremony, see how Silvercrest honors the old traditions." His eyes kept moving. Past Alpha Richard. Past Vivian, who had straightened her posture and arranged her face into an expression of demure interest. Past Marcus and Celeste and the other ranked members. And then, those silver eyes found Nora. She was still standing there, frozen halfway between the pillar and the servants' entrance, wearing her gray Omega dress, with her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders, because she owned no pins fine enough for a ceremony. She was nothing special. Plain features, average height, ordinary brown. Eyes. She had been told this her entire life, reminded of it daily. But Demon Nightshade looked at her as if she were the only person in the room. The moment stretched. Nora could not breathe, could not think. His eyes held hers with an intensity that felt physical, like hands gripping her shoulders. She saw his nostrils flare slightly, saw something flicker across his expression. Confusion, maybe, or recognition. Then his gaze shifted away, and Nora gasped, realizing she had been holding her. Breath. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What had just happened? "Your ceremony," Demon said, still speaking to Alpha Richard but moving now into the hall with his guards following. "Has it begun?" Richard shook his head, recovering his composure. "Not yet, Your Majesty. We were waiting for the moon to reach its peak. Perhaps another half hour. May I offer you refreshment? A seat of honor? My daughter Vivian would be delighted to keep you company." He gestured toward Vivian, who stepped forward with a curtsy so perfect it must have been practiced 1,000 times. "Your Majesty," Vivian said, her voice like honey, "it is an extraordinary honor to have you here. Please, allow me to show you to the high table. I can explain our ceremonial traditions if you are unfamiliar with them." Demon's silver eyes flicked to her, assessed her in a single glance, and dismissed her just as quickly. "I am familiar with the traditions. I will stand." The rejection was subtle but unmistakable. Vivian's smile tightened at the corners. Alpha Richard coughed. Of course, Your Majesty, as you prefer. If you need anything at all, please do not hesitate. Demon nodded absently. He was looking around the room again, and Nora realized with a jolt of panic that his gaze was searching, hunting. She needed to leave. Now. Before whatever strange moment had passed between them could be examined or questioned. She turned toward the servants' entrance and walked as quickly as she dared without actually running. You there? The voice stopped her as effectively as a hand around her throat. Deep. Commanding. Undeniable. Nora closed her eyes for a brief second, gathering what little courage she possessed, then turned. Demon Nightshade was looking directly at her again. He raised one hand and crooked a finger. Come here. The hall had gone completely silent. Nora could feel hundreds of eyes on her now, the weight of their shock and confusion and judgment. Her legs moved before her mind. Could catch up, carrying her back into the center of the room, back toward the Alpha King who watched her approach with an expression she could not read. She stopped 10 feet away and dropped into a curtsy, her dress pooling around her. Your Majesty, she whispered. Closer. She rose and took 3 more steps. Now she was close enough to smell him. Cedarwood and smoke and something wild that made her head spin. Close enough to see that his eyes were not merely silver but contained flecks of gold, like stars in a night sky. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, despite the winter cold that had entered with him. What is your name? Demon asked. His voice had softened but lost none of its authority. Nora, Your Majesty. Nora Thorne. She kept her eyes down, staring at the marble floor, at his black boots. Looking at him directly felt dangerous, like staring into the sun. Nora Thorne, he repeated, tasting her name. And what is your rank in this pack? The question was simple. The answer was humiliating. She felt her face flush hot. I am Omega, Your Majesty. I have no rank. No rank? He said it quietly, but somehow everyone in the hall heard it. And yet you are here, at a blood moon ceremony. Interesting. She did not know how to respond to that. Was it a question? An observation? An accusation? I was just leaving, Your Majesty, she said carefully. I did not mean to intrude on pack business. I will return to the kitchens where I belong. There was a pause. Then, Demon did something that would be talked about in Silvercrest for years to come. He reached out and lifted her chin with 2 fingers, forcing her to meet his eyes. The touch was gentle but absolutely firm. Heat spread from the point of contact like liquid fire through her veins. Nora gasped. His eyes widened slightly, and she knew he felt it too. Whatever it was, this impossible, inexplicable connection that arced between them like lightning. You do not belong in the kitchens, Demon said, and though he spoke to her, his voice carried to every corner of the hall. You will stand with me during the ceremony, as my guest, under my protection. The words detonated like bombs in the silence. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Nora stared at him in complete shock. His guest? His protection? That was impossible. That was madness. Alpha King Demon Nightshade did not take Omega. Nobody's as guests. He did not offer protection to wolves who were not even wolves. Your Majesty, Alpha Richard's voice cut in, strained and careful. I am certain there has been some misunderstanding. Nora is merely a servant here. She has no wolf, no standing. She is not appropriate company for someone of your station. I apologize if she has caused offense. I will have her removed immediately. Demon did not look away from Nora. His fingers remained under her chin, keeping her gaze locked with his. Did I ask for your opinion, Alpha Richard? The temperature in the room dropped another 10 degrees. Richard went pale. No, Your Majesty, of course not. I only thought. Then keep your thoughts to yourself unless I request them. Demon's tone was pleasant, almost conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. I have stated my intention clearly. Nora will stand with me during the ceremony. Do you have an objection to that? It was not really a question. It was a test. Everyone in the room knew it. Challenge an Alpha King and face the consequences, or submit and preserve what little dignity remained. Richard bowed deeply. No objection, Your Majesty. It is your right to choose your company. I simply wanted to ensure you were not being imposed upon. Demon finally released Nora's chin and turned his full attention to Richard. The Alpha visibly flinched under that silver gaze. I assure you, I am never imposed upon. I do exactly what I wish, when I wish. Your servant, as you call her, has caught my interest. I would know more about her. That should concern you far less than it apparently does. Vivian stepped forward, her composure cracking around the edges. Your Majesty, if I may, Nora is not even a true pack member. She was taken in as a charity case when her parents died. She has no bloodline, no training in courtly matters. She would not know how to conduct herself in your presence. Please, allow me to attend you instead. I am the Alpha's daughter. I understand protocol. I can... Demon held up one hand, and Vivian's words died in her throat. I did not ask for a history lesson. I did not ask for alternatives. I made a simple statement. Nora will stand with me. The subject is closed. He looked at Nora again, and this time there was something almost gentle in his expression. Unless you object. Do you object, Nora Thorne? She should say yes. She should remove herself from this situation immediately, before it became even more complicated, more dangerous. Standing with the Alpha King would paint a target on her back that would never fade. Vivian would make her life hell. The entire pack would turn against her even more than they already had. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. No, Your Majesty. I do not object. Something flashed in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. Or triumph. He offered her his arm, a gesture so formal and courtly that for a moment Nora could only stare at it. Then come. Stand. Beside me. Let us see what this blood moon brings. Nora placed her hand on his arm with trembling fingers. The moment she touched him, that heat flared again, stronger this time. She heard him inhale sharply, felt his muscles tense beneath the fine fabric of his jacket. He felt it too. He absolutely felt it. Demon led her to the front of the hall, to the space directly before the altar where the ceremony would take place. The highest-ranked members of the pack stood there, Vivian and Marcus. Among them. They parted reluctantly, their faces ranging from shocked to furious. Vivian looked like she might actually attack someone. Her green eyes burned with hatred as they fixed on Nora. But she said nothing. No one said anything, because Demon Nightshade had made his choice, and to question it was to question his authority. Nora stood beside the Alpha King, acutely aware of every eye in the room boring into her back. She had never been more terrified in her life. She had also never felt more alive. Because for the first time since her parents had died 5 years ago, someone had chosen her. Not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because he wanted to, even if she did not understand why, even if it made no sense, even if it would cost her everything. The moon began to rise outside the high windows, and as its light shifted from silver to crimson, the ceremony began. Elder Thomas, the pack's spiritual leader, stepped forward to the altar. He was ancient, his face lined with age, his white hair flowing to his waist. But his voice was strong as he raised his arms to the sky. Children of the moon, we gather on this sacred night when the veil grows thin and the old magic walks among us. The blood moon rises, and with it, the power of our ancestors flows through our veins. Tonight we honor those who came before. Tonight we strengthen the bonds that make us pack. Tonight we open ourselves to the gifts the moon goddess would bestow. The pack responded in unison, their voices joining in the ancient words of the ritual. Nora knew the words too. She had heard them enough times, standing in her spot at the back. But she had never spoken them. Omegas without wolves did not participate. They observed. Yet here she stood at the front, and when Demon's deep voice joined the chant, he glanced at her expectantly. Nora hesitated, then added her voice to the chorus. It felt wrong. It felt right. It felt like stepping through a door she had been told all her life was locked. Elder Thomas began to call forward members of the pack to receive the blood moon blessing. It was a symbolic gesture, a touch of blessed water to the forehead, a whispered prayer for strength and guidance. The highest ranked went first. Vivienne stepped forward with perfect grace, kneeling before Elder Thomas. The old man dipped his fingers in the silver bowl on the altar and traced a symbol on her forehead while speaking words too quiet for Nora to hear. Vivienne rose, bowed, and returned to her place, her eyes flashing toward Nora with pure venom. Marcus went next, then Celeste, then others in descending order of rank. Nora watched the ritual, feeling Demon's presence beside her like a furnace. He had not released her arm. His hand rested over hers, keeping her close, keeping her anchored. She did not understand it. Any of it. Why had he chosen her? What did he want? And why did his touch feel like coming home to a place she had never been? You are trembling, murmured Demon, his voice pitched for her ears alone. She started, not realizing he had been paying attention to her rather than the ceremony. I am sorry, Your Majesty. I am not accustomed to being the center of attention. A small smile curved his lips. It transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. Get accustomed to it. I suspect your days of hiding in shadows are over, Nora Thorne. Before she could ask what he meant, Elder Thomas called out, Will the Alpha King approach for the blessing? Demon released Nora's arm and stepped forward. The Elder's eyes widened slightly as the Alpha King knelt before him. This was unprecedented. Kings did not kneel to anyone, not even spiritual leaders. But Demon bowed his head with perfect humility, and Elder Thomas quickly recovered, his hands shaking slightly as he performed the blessing. When Demon rose and turned back, his eyes found Nora immediately. He extended his hand to her. Come. She shook her head quickly. I cannot. Your Majesty, I am not permitted. Omegas do not receive the blessing. His expression hardened. You are under my protection. That makes you permitted. Come. Now. It was not a request. Nora moved forward on legs that felt like water. She was aware of the shocked gasps, the furious whispers. This was too much. Demon had already broken protocol by claiming her as his guest. But this was different. This was sacred ritual. This was pack law. Elder Thomas looked uncertain, his eyes darting to Alpha. Richard for guidance. Richard's face was a mask of barely controlled fury, but he gave a tight nod. What else could he do? To refuse the Alpha King was to invite war. Nora knelt before the altar, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Elder Thomas dipped his fingers in the blessed water. His hand hovered over her forehead, trembling. Then he made contact, tracing the ancient symbol while speaking the words of blessing. The moment his fingers touched her skin, pain exploded through Nora's skull, white-hot agony that drove through her mind like a spike. She gasped, her hands flying to her head. She heard screaming and dimly realized it was coming from her own throat. The world tilted sideways. She felt herself falling. Then strong arms caught her, pulling her against a chest that rumbled with a growl so deep and dangerous that the entire hall fell silent. Demon held her, his body curved protectively around hers, his eyes blazing silver fire at everyone present. What did you do? He snarled at Elder Thomas. The old man backed away, hands raised. Nothing! I swear, Your Majesty, I only performed the standard blessing. I do not know what— Nora convulsed in Demon's arms. The pain was unbearable. It felt like something was tearing its way out of her mind, clawing through barriers she had not known existed. And then she heard it. A voice. Not human. Not external. It came from inside her. Resonant and ancient and powerful. Voice was female, regal, amused. I have been waiting so long for you to be ready, little one. Did you truly think you were broken? Did you think you were less? Oh, my dear girl, you have been asleep. But now it is time to wake up. Nora's eyes flew open. They were no longer brown. They glowed with golden light that illuminated Demon's shocked face above her. She felt power surge through her body, felt something fundamental shift and rearrange inside her soul. Her wolf. She had a wolf. She had always had a wolf. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. The golden light spread from Nora's eyes across her skin, illuminating the veins beneath like rivers of molten metal. Demon stared down at her, his expression a mixture of awe and something else. Something possessive and fierce. Impossible, someone whispered. She is Omega. She has no wolf. This cannot be happening. But it was happening. Nora could feel her wolf now, a presence vast and powerful, stretching after a long sleep. The pain was subsiding, replaced by a sensation of completeness she had never experienced. She had spent 5 years feeling like half a person, broken and defective. Now she understood. She had never been broken. She had been dormant. Who are you? Demon asked quietly, his face inches from hers. Nora did not know how to answer that question. She no longer knew who she was. The golden light pulsed brighter, and her wolf spoke again, this time loud enough that everyone with supernatural hearing would catch it. I am Aurelia, daughter of the first wolf, born of moonlight and starfire. And this woman you have dismissed and degraded carries the blood of the primordials in her veins. She is no Omega. She is a queen. And she is this man's true mate. The declaration sent shockwaves through the assembled pack. Nora saw Vivian's face go white, saw Alpha Richard stumble backward, saw shock and fear and disbelief ripple through the crowd. Demon's arms tightened around her. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I know. Just 2 words. But they contained everything. He had known. From the moment he saw her. From that first glance across the hall. His wolf had recognized hers, even sleeping. Had called to her across the distance. Had drawn him here tonight. Not for politics or ceremony, but for her. Nora felt tears slide down her cheeks. I do not understand. How is this possible? My parents were not primordials, wolves. They were ordinary. Were they? Her wolf, Aurelia, asked gently. Or is that simply what you were told? Think, Nora. Remember. Nora searched her fragmented memories of her parents. They had died when she was 14, killed in a rogue attack. Or so she had been told. She had been brought to Silvercrest as the only survivor, and Alpha Richard had taken her in. But he had never allowed her to attend their burial, never shown her their bodies, never permitted her to grieve properly. He had immediately designated her Omega and put her to work in the kitchens. At the time, she had thought it was kindness. He could have cast her out entirely. But now, as Aurelia's presence sharpened her mind and cleared the fog that had covered her memories for 5 years, Nora began to see another possibility. What if her parents had not been killed by rogues? What if they had been killed because of who they were? Because of what Nora could become? Your parents were guardians of the old bloodline, Aurelia said, her voice tinged with sadness. They went into hiding, concealed their power, lived as ordinary wolves to protect you until you were old enough to handle your inheritance. But they were discovered, betrayed by someone they trusted. They fought to give you time to escape, and they succeeded. But the price was their lives. Rage flooded through Nora, white-hot and blinding. "Who?" she demanded out loud, her voice no longer weak or hesitant. It rang with power that made several Packy members flinch. Who betrayed them? She knew the answer before Aurelia spoke it. She could see it in Alpha Richard's face as he stood frozen at the edge of the crowd. Could see the guilt and fear warring in his expression. "Your father's old friend," Aurelia said quietly. "The man who promised to protect you if anything happened to them. Richard Ashford." The hall erupted into chaos. Nora rose to her feet, and though Demon tried to keep hold of her, she gently extracted herself from his arms. She needed to stand on her own for this. The golden light still pulsed beneath her skin, illuminating her from within. She looked at Alpha Richard across the distance of the ceremonial hall, and saw him for what he truly was. Not a benevolent leader who had taken in an orphan, but a murderer who had kept his victim close to ensure she never discovered the truth. "You killed them," Nora said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. "You killed my parents and then pretended to save me. You suppressed my wolf, did you not? That is why I never shifted. Why I never felt her. You had Elder Thomas bind her somehow. Keep her dormant. Keep me weak and controllable." Richard's mouth opened and closed. For a moment he seemed about to deny it. Then his face hardened into something ugly. "Your parents were traitors. They possessed power that belonged to the Pack Collective, not to one bloodline. They refused to share it, refused to submit to proper authority. They would have raised you to be the same, arrogant, dangerous. I did what was necessary to protect Silvercrest. You did what was necessary to steal power that was never yours." Demon's voice cut through the air like a whip. He had moved to stand beside Nora, his body angled protectively even though he was not touching her. "You murdered members of the primordial bloodline, the sacred line blessed by the moon goddess herself, and you kept their daughter as a slave to hide your crime. That is not protection. That is abomination." Richard's face flushed red. "You do not understand the situation, Your Majesty. You were not there. You do not know what they were planning." Demon took a single step forward, and the sheer menace in his movement made Richard stumble backward. "Explain it to me then. Explain how murdering a man and woman who never raised a hand against you was justified. Explain how binding the wolf of an innocent child and forcing her to live as Omega filth for 5 years was necessary." "I am listening, Alpha Richard. Convince me." Richard could not. He looked around desperately for support, but the pack members who had stood with him moments ago had edged away. No one wanted to be associated with this. No one wanted to stand against an Alpha King in defense of child murder and bloodline suppression. Vivienne stood frozen, her perfect composure shattered. She looked at her father with something close to horror. Whatever she had known or not known about his crimes, seeing them laid bare like this clearly shook her. Elder Thomas had sunk to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Forgive me," he whispered, though Nora was not certain if he spoke to her or to the moon goddess. "He ordered me to bind your wolf after your parents died, said it was for your own protection, that you were too young to handle such power. I believed him. I thought I was helping you. Forgive me." Nora looked at the old man and felt a complicated swirl of emotions. Anger, yes, but also pity. He had been manipulated, used by Richard to commit an atrocity he believed was mercy. "How do I break the binding?" Nora asked. Her voice was steady now, certain. She could feel Aurelia pressing against the remnants of the spell, ready to fully emerge. Elder Thomas looked up, wiping his eyes. "The blood moon blessing broke most of it. That is why your wolf could finally speak. But there are still chains on her, preventing full manifestation. I can remove them, but... He hesitated. But what? Demon demanded. But the process will be painful. The binding has been in place for 5 years. It has grown roots deep into her spirit. Tearing it out will feel like tearing out part of herself, and if it is done incorrectly, it could damage her wolf permanently, perhaps even kill her. Silence fell. Nora felt Demon tense beside her. When she glanced at him, she saw fear in his silver eyes. Real, genuine fear. For her. No, he said flatly. Find another way. I will bring healers. From my court. The best in the kingdoms. They will remove the binding safely. Nora shook her head. How long will that take? Days? Weeks? Demon's jaw clenched. However long it takes. I will not risk you. Something warm bloomed in Nora's chest at those words, but Aurelia was already speaking in her mind. We cannot wait, Nora. Richard knows he is exposed now. He will run or he will attack. Either way, innocence will suffer. We need our full power now, tonight, and the binding will only grow. Harder to remove with each passing day. Nora knew her wolf was right. She turned to Elder Thomas. Do it. Remove the binding. Demon grabbed her arm, spinning her to face him. His eyes blazed with intensity. You do not have to do this. Not now. Not like this. Let me protect you. That is what mates do. They protect each other. The word hung in the air between them. Mates. He had said it out loud, claimed her not just as guest or protected, but as his mate. His true mate. Nora felt her stutter. If we are mates, she said softly, then you know I cannot hide while others face danger because of me. Richard will not surrender peacefully. He will fight. And when he does, people will die. Unless I can stop him. Demon's grip tightened. Then we stop him together. You do not have to bear this alone anymore, Nora. You have never had to bear anything alone. I see you. I have seen you from the moment I walked into this hall. And I will stand with you now and always. But I will not stand by and watch you suffer if there is any other option. Nora reached up and touched his face, marveling at her own boldness. A few hours ago she would never have dared. But everything had changed. She had changed. There is no other option, she said gently. You know that. Your wolf knows that. This is necessary. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Demon closed his eyes briefly, every line of his body screaming protest. But when he opened them again, there was resignation mixed with the fear. Then I stay with you. I hold you through it. Agreed? Nora nodded. Agreed. She looked at Elder Thomas. I am ready. Do what needs to be done. The old man stood on shaking legs and approached the altar. He began to gather items, herbs and candles, and a blade that gleamed with silver light. This is ancient magic, he said as he worked. Older than the pacts, older than the hierarchies we have built. It requires blood and will and the blessing of the moon herself. We must do this beneath the blood moon at its peak. He looked out the high windows where the crimson moon hung full and terrible in the sky. We have perhaps 10 minutes before it begins to wane. After that, the window closes until the next blood moon. 10 years from now. Nora felt Aurelia's urgency pulse through her. Then we begin immediately. Elder Thomas nodded and began to arrange the items in a circle around the altar. You must stand in the center. The Alpha King may remain close, but he cannot interfere no matter what he sees or hears. If he breaks the circle, the spell could backlash and kill you both. Do you understand? Demon's face had gone pale, but he nodded. Nora stepped into the circle, her heart pounding. The golden light beneath her skin pulsed in rhythm with the red moon above. Elder Thomas began to chant in the old language, words that predated modern pack speak by thousands of years. The candles flared to life with flames that burned blue and cold. Nora felt something shift in the air, felt power gathering like a storm about to break. Then Elder Thomas took the silver blade and made a small cut across his own palm. He let 3 drops of blood fall onto the altar stone, and when they hit, the entire hall shook. Light erupted from the altar, crimson and gold twisting together, and it slammed into Nora's chest like a physical blow. Pain. Unimaginable pain. It felt like every nerve in her body had been set on fire. She screamed, unable to stop herself. The binding was fighting back, refusing to release its hold. She could feel it wrapped around Aurelia like chains of ice and iron. Elder Thomas continued the chant, his voice rising, and the light intensified. Nora fell to her knees, convulsing. Through the agony, she heard Demon shouting her name, felt him trying to reach her. But invisible walls kept him back, the magic protecting its work. "Do not fight it," Aurelia gasped in her mind, her own voice strained. "With pain. Let it burn away. Let go of the girl you thought you were. Become who you actually are." Nora did not know how to do that. She had been Omega for so long, invisible for so long. How did she let that go? How did she become someone new? "You remember," Aurelia said, softer now. "Remember who you were before they took it from you. Remember your mother's laugh, your father's strength. Remember running through forests with them, learning to hunt, learning to fight. Remember the night they told you what you were, what you would become. Remember, Nora. Remember." And she did. Memories flooded back, crashing through the walls Richard had built in her mind. She remembered her mother, beautiful and fierce, teaching her to track prey by scent alone. Remembered her father, patient and powerful, showing her how to call the wild things to her side. Remembered the night before they died, when they had sat her down and explained the truth. She was primordial, the last of the direct bloodline. She would be powerful beyond measure when her wolf awakened. She would be hunted for it. They had made plans to leave Silvercrest, to disappear into the far territories where Richard's influence could not reach. But they had waited one day too long. The memories brought fresh pain, but also strength. Nora stopped fighting the spell and surrendered to it. She let it burn away the binding, let the chains shatter one by one. And as they broke, power flooded into her. Real power. Ancient power. The power of the first wolves who had walked with the moon goddess in the age before civilization. The light exploded outward from her body in a wave that shattered every window in the hall. Glass rained down like diamonds as Nora threw her head back and howled, but it was not a human sound that came from her throat. It was the howl of a wolf, deep and resonant, and filled with dominance. Every wolf present fell to their knees involuntarily, compelled by instinct older than thought. She was not Omega. She was Alpha. Primordial Alpha, and her wolf demanded submission from all who heard her voice. Demon alone remained standing, though she saw him trembling with the effort. His own wolf recognized hers, called to hers, wanted to submit and dominate in equal measure, because that was what true mates did. They challenged each other. They completed each other. Nora rose to her feet as the last of the binding dissolved into ash. The golden light receded back into her skin, but her eyes retained their glow. She looked different now. Not physically, perhaps, but the way she carried herself had transformed. No more hunched shoulders. No more downcast eyes. She stood straight and proud, a queen recognizing her throne. Elder Thomas backed away from the altar, his face a mixture of awe and terror. "The primordial awakens," he breathed. "Moon goddess, protect us all." Nora turned to Richard, who had been forced to his knees like the rest of the pack. He stared up at her with undisguised hatred and fear. You should have killed me when you had the chance, Nora said, her voice carrying the dual resonance of woman and wolf speaking together. You should have struck me down the night you murdered my parents, instead of keeping me alive as your trophy of conquest. Because now, I remember everything, and I am going to make you answer for what you have done. Richard snarled, his own wolf rising in his eyes. You are still just a girl, powerful perhaps, but inexperienced. I have led this pack for 30 years. Do you truly think you can stand against me? Nora smiled, and it was not a nice expression. I do not need to stand against you. I just need to stand. The moon goddess will handle the rest. As if in answer to her words, the blood moon pulsed above them, and a beam of pure red light shot down through the broken windows to illuminate Richard where he knelt. He screamed as it touched him, his body beginning to smoke. This was judgment, divine judgment for crimes against the sacred bloodline. Nora had not called it. She had no idea how, but the goddess herself had heard the truth and found Richard wanting. The light intensified, and Richard's screams became inhuman. His wolf tried to surface, tried to protect him, but there was no protection from this. He had spilled primordial blood. He had bound a primordial wolf. He had broken the oldest laws, and now he would pay the price. Within moments, it was over. The light faded, and Richard Ashford collapsed to the marble floor. He was not dead, but his wolf was gone. Nora could sense it, the absence where his wolf had been. The moon goddess had taken it, severed the bond, made him human as punishment. He would live out the rest of his days among wolves, but never as one of them. It was a mercy greater than he deserved. Vivian rushed to her father's side, sobbing. For all her cruelty and pride, she loved him. Nora felt a twinge of something that might have been pity. Then Vivian looked up at her, and the expression on her face was pure venom. You did this, she hissed. You destroyed him. You destroyed everything. Nora shook her head. He destroyed himself the moment he chose murder over honor. I am sorry you must suffer for his crimes, Vivian. I truly am. But he made his choices. Now he lives with the consequences. She turned away from the broken Alpha and his weeping daughter. Turned to face the pack that had scorned her, dismissed her, treated her as less than nothing. For 5 years. They were all still kneeling, and she realized with a start that they were waiting for her command, waiting for her to claim what was hers by right of blood and power. Rise, Nora said, and her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The pack obeyed instantly, getting to their feet, but keeping their heads bowed in submission. Demon moved to her side, the only one who met her eyes as an equal. He looked at her with such intensity that Nora felt heat bloom in her cheeks despite everything that had just happened. What will you do? He asked quietly. This pack is yours now if you claim it. Richard is finished. Vivian has no authority without him. You could take Silvercrest and rule it as you were meant to. Nora considered it. Part of her wanted exactly that. Wanted to take command of those who had demeaned her and show them what true leadership looked like. But she looked around the hall, at the faces of people who had ignored her pain, and she felt nothing but weariness. This was not her pack. These were not her people. They had proven that through 5 years of indifference. No, she said finally. I do not want Silvercrest. I do not want to rule over those who would only follow out of fear. Let someone else take leadership here. Someone who actually cares about these people. She looked at Marcus, who had been watching everything with wide eyes. You, Beta's son, you are not as cruel as your sister or as corrupt as Richard. Do you want this pack? Marcus blinked in shock. I am not Alpha Blood. I cannot. The old rules are broken tonight, Nora interrupted. Power does not flow only through bloodlines. It flows to those worthy of it. Are you worthy, Marcus? Will you lead these people with honor? Will you protect the weak instead of exploiting them?" Marcus swallowed hard. Then he straightened his shoulders and nodded. "I will try. I swear on the moon goddess, I will try to be better than those who came before me." Nora studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good enough. Silvercrest is yours. Rule it well." She felt Aurelia's approval pulse through her. This was right. This was justice without vengeance. Marcus immediately went to one knee. "Thank you, Queen Nora. I will not forget this gift." The title sent a shock through Nora. Queen, not Alpha, not Luna. Queen, because that was what primordials were. Royalty by divine right. She was still processing that when Demon stepped closer, his hand finding hers. The moment their skin touched, that electric connection flared again, stronger than ever now that Aurelia was fully awakened. Nora gasped, and she saw Demon's eyes flash pure silver in response. "We need to talk," he said, his voice rough. "Privately." Nora nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Demon turned to address the hall. "The ceremony is concluded. The blood moon has given its blessing and its judgment. All of you witnessed what transpired here tonight. Remember it. Honor it. Speak of it with truth and respect. The primordial bloodline has returned. That changes everything." He did not wait for acknowledgement. He simply pulled Nora with him toward a side door that led to private chambers. The pack parted before them like water. Once they were through the door and into a quiet corridor, Demon stopped and turned to face her. They stood in semi-darkness, lit only by the red glow of the moon through a nearby window. "Are you all right?" he asked. And there was such genuine concern in his voice that Nora felt tears prick her eyes. "I do not know," she admitted. "Everything has changed so quickly. 2 hours ago I was nobody. Now I am this. I do not even know what this is." Demon reached up and cupped her face with both hands, his touch gentle despite his obvious strength. "You are Nora Thorne, primordial queen, last of the sacred bloodline. You are powerful and brave and more beautiful than you realize. And you are mine." The possessiveness in that last word should have frightened her. Instead, it sent warmth cascading through her entire body. "Yours," she repeated softly, "because we are mates." It was not a question. She could feel the truth of it now, the bond that tied their souls together. It had been there from the first moment, but now with Aurelia awakened, it blazed like the sun. Demon nodded slowly. "From the moment I saw you, my wolf knew. You are my true mate, the one the goddess chose for me before I was even born. I have searched for you for 30 years, Nora. 30 years of waiting and hoping and beginning to lose faith. And then I walked into that hall tonight and there you were, trying to make yourself invisible in the shadows. But you could never be invisible to me. You shine like a star." Nora's breath caught. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever looked at her like this. I do not know how to be what you need. I was raised as Omega. I know nothing of courts or politics or being queen to a king. I will disappoint you." Demon's thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away a tear she had not realized had fallen. "You could never disappoint me. And you do not need to know anything except how to be yourself. I have advisors for politics. I have generals for war. What I need is you. Just you. Exactly as you are." He leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you have been through trauma tonight that would break most people. If you need time, if you need space to process everything, I will give it to you. But I need you to understand something. I am yours, Nora. Completely and irrevocably yours. My pack, my power, my protection. Everything I have is yours. You are not alone anymore. You will never be alone again." The words broke something inside Nora. Some final wall she had been holding on to since her parents died. She had been so alone for so long, so isolated and afraid. And here was this impossibly powerful man, offering her everything: belonging, protection, love. She leaned into him and let herself cry. Really cry, for the first time in 5 years. Demon held her through it, one hand stroking her hair, the other wrapped securely around her waist. He murmured things she could not quite hear, soothing sounds that probably did not even need words. Eventually, the tears slowed. Nora pulled back slightly, embarrassed by the wet spot she had left on his shirt. "I am sorry. I did not mean to fall apart like—" Demon caught her chin and tilted her face up to his. "You survived 5 years of abuse and degradation. You discovered your parents were murdered by someone you trusted. You awakened a dormant wolf and reclaimed devastating power. You brought judgment on a corrupt alpha and passed leadership to a new one. All in the span of 2 hours. I think you have earned the right to fall apart if you need to." Nora laughed shakily. "When you put it that way, it does sound rather overwhelming." Demon smiled, and Nora's heart stuttered at the beauty of it. "What happens now?" she asked. "Do I go with you? To your kingdom? Do I stay here? What does being your mate actually mean in practical terms?" Demon's expression grew serious. "It means whatever we decide it means. Traditionally, my mate would come to live with me in the Northern Palace. She would be crowned queen beside me. She would help me lead the 12 packs and maintain peace in the kingdoms. But you are not traditional. Nora, you are primordial. You have your own power, your own authority. If you want to establish your own territory, build your own pack, I will support that. If you want to rule beside me as equal partners, I will celebrate that. If you want time alone to explore your abilities and decide what you want from life, I will wait. The choice is yours." Nora stared at him. "You would truly let me choose? Even if I chose to leave?" His jaw clenched. "It would kill me. But yes, I want you happy, Nora. Want you fulfilled and powerful and everything you were meant to be. If that means letting you go, I will find the strength somehow. Though I hope—" He trailed off. "You hope?" Nora prompted. "I hope you choose to stay with me. I hope you choose to let me love you. Because I already do, you know. Love you. I know it is too soon to say that. We have known each other for mere hours. But the mate bond does not care about timelines or propriety. My wolf recognized yours, and my heart followed. Love you, Nora Thorne. And I will love you until the moon falls from the sky." Nora could not breathe, could not think. Demon loved her. This powerful, beautiful, impossible man loved her. Aurelia purred in her mind, pleased and satisfied. "He is ours. Say yes. Claim him as he claims us." Nora found her voice somehow. "I do not know if what I feel is love yet. Everything is too new, too raw. But I know that when you look at me, I feel seen for the first time in my life. I know that when you touch me, I feel safe and cherished and alive. I know that the thought of walking away from you makes my chest ache. Is that enough? For now?" Demon's eyes blazed with emotion. "That is everything. More than I dared hope for." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Nora did not want to pull away. She wanted this, wanted him. Their lips met, and the world exploded into sensation, heat and light and power that crackled between them like lightning. The mate bond sang, recognizing the beginning of something sacred. Demon growled against her mouth, his hands tightening on her waist. The kiss deepened, becoming something desperate and claiming. Nora had never been kissed before, but instinct and Aurelia's guidance carried her through. She opened to him, let him explore, gave as good as she got. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Demon's eyes had gone pure wolf, silver, and wild. "If we do not stop now, I will not be able to stop at all," he said, his voice gravelly with restraint. "And you deserve better than a quick claiming in a corridor after the worst night of your life." Nora appreciated his control even as her body protested the distance. "What do you suggest?" Demon took a deep breath, clearly fighting for composure. "I suggest we return to the hall, make appropriate farewells. Then I take you to my residence in the city, where you can rest and recover. Tomorrow we can discuss the future properly, with clear heads and full hearts." It was a sensible plan. Nora nodded, though part of her wanted to argue that she did not want to be sensible. She wanted to lose herself in him, forget everything else for a while. But Demon was right. This was too important to rush. They returned to the ceremonial hall to find it mostly empty. The pack had dispersed, no doubt to process the earth-shattering events of the evening. Only a few remained. Marcus stood near the altar, speaking quietly with Elder Thomas. Vivian sat on the floor beside her unconscious father, her perfect composure completely shattered. When she saw Nora and Demon enter, her eyes filled with fresh hatred. But she said nothing. What could she say? Her father's crimes had been exposed by divine judgment itself. Nora approached Marcus, who immediately bowed. "Queen Nora, how may I serve you?" Nora shook her head. "I am not your queen, Marcus. I gave you this pack. You answer only to yourself and the moon goddess now. But I would ask something of you." Marcus straightened. "Anything." Nora glanced at Vivian. "She is not responsible for her father's crimes. She was a child when my parents were killed. Do not punish her for his sins. Let her find her own path, whatever that may be." Marcus followed her gaze and nodded slowly. "She will be given fair treatment. I swear it." Nora saw Vivian's expression flicker with surprise. She had expected retribution, expected to be cast out or worse. Instead, Nora was offering her grace. It would make them friends. But perhaps it would plant a seed of something other than hatred. Demon placed a hand on Nora's lower back. "We should go. You need rest." Nora nodded and let him guide her toward the exit. But as they reached the doors, Elder Thomas called out, "Queen Nora, wait." She turned to find the old man approaching with something clutched in his hands. When he opened his fingers, she saw 2 pendants on silver chains. They were beautifully crafted, each depicting a wolf howling at a crescent moon. "These belong to your parents," Elder Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your father gave them to me for safekeeping the week before he died. He said if anything happened to them, I should give these to you when you awakened. I have kept them hidden all these years, waiting for this moment." Nora took the pendants with trembling hands. They were warm, almost alive with residual magic. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means more than you know." Elder Thomas bowed deeply. "It is the least I can do to atone for my part in your suffering. Walk with the goddess's blessing, Queen Nora, and know that if you ever have need of me, you have only to call." Nora clasped the pendants to her chest and followed Demon out into the night. The blood moon still hung overhead, but it had begun its descent. The ceremony was truly over. A chapter of her life had closed. Another was beginning. Demon's car waited in the courtyard, sleek and black and utterly out of place, among the rustic pack buildings. His guards stood at attention as they approached. Demon helped Nora into the back seat with courtly grace, then slid in beside her. As the car pulled away from Silvercrest, Nora watched the pack house disappear into the distance. She felt no sadness at leaving, only relief, and hope for what came next. "Where are we going?" she asked. Demon laced his fingers through hers. "To my private residence in the city. It is quiet, secure. You will be safe there while you decide what you want to do." Nora leaned her head against his shoulder, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her weak and shaky. "Will you stay with me?" she asked. "I do not want to be alone tonight." She felt Demon press a kiss to the top of her head. "I will stay as long as you want me. Always, if you will have me." Nora smiled against his shoulder. "Always sounds good." The drive took less than an hour. Demon's residence turned out to be a beautiful modern house on the edge of the forest, all glass and wood and open spaces. Nora loved it immediately. It felt clean and peaceful, completely unlike the oppressive stone walls of Silvercrest. Demon showed her to a guest room with an enormous bed and its own bathroom. "Rest," he said gently. "I will be just down the hall if you need anything. Anything at all." Nora caught his hand before he could leave. "Stay. Please. I know we should take things slowly, but I do not want to be alone. Just hold me while I sleep. Can you do that?" Demon's expression softened. "I can do that." He kicked off his shoes and laid down on top of the covers, opening his arms. Nora curled against him, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was the most comforting sound she had ever heard. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for choosing me, for everything." Demon's arms tightened around her. "Thank you for being brave enough to trust me, to trust yourself. Nora, you are extraordinary." "I hope you are beginning to see that." Nora smiled sleepily. "I am beginning to." Within minutes, she was asleep. For the first time in 5 years, she slept without nightmares, without fear, because she was not alone anymore. She was protected. She was loved. She was home. When she woke the next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, and Demon was still holding her. He had not moved all night, content to be her anchor. Nora looked up at him and found him already awake, watching. Her with those beautiful silver eyes. "Good morning," he murmured. "Did you sleep well?" Nora nodded. "Better than I have in years. Thank you." She sat up slowly, reluctant to leave the warmth of his arms, but knowing they needed to talk. About the future. About what came next. "So," she said, trying for levity, "what does one do when one discovers they are a primordial queen mated to an alpha king? Is there a handbook?" Demon laughed, the sound rich and warm. "If there is, I have never read it. I suspect we will have to make up the rules as we go." Nora sobered slightly. "I meant what I said last night. I do not know how to be a queen. I do not know how to navigate court politics or lead a pack or any of the things you probably need in a mate." Demon sat up as well, taking her hands in his. "Then we will learn together. Nora, I have been Alpha King for a decade. I have advisors and generals and people who manage the day-to-day operations of the kingdom. What I need from you is not administrative skill. I need your honesty, your strength, your ability to see people for who they truly are beneath the masks they wear. Those are gifts far more valuable than political maneuvering." Nora considered that. "You really believe that?" Demon nodded seriously. "I do. And more than that, I believe in you. In your potential. You have barely begun to explore your power, Nora. Once you do, once you fully understand what you are capable of, you will be unstoppable." Aurelia stirred in her mind, pleased. He speaks truth. We have much to learn, much to discover, but we will do it together. Both of us. All of us. Nora smiled at the thought. She was not alone in her head anymore either. She had Aurelia now, a companion and guide who would never leave her. "I want to accept," Nora said slowly. "I want to come with you to the Northern Palace. I want to try this, try us. But I need you to understand something. I am not going to be a decorative queen who sits quietly while you make all the decisions. If I do this, I am your equal partner. I have a voice, and I will use it. Demon's eyes flashed with something that looked like pride. I would expect nothing less. In fact, I demand it. The Northern Kingdoms need a queen with fire in her veins and steel in her spine. They need you, Nora Thorne. Nora felt her heart expand with something that might have been joy. Then I accept. I will be your queen, your mate, your partner. If this story touched your
heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? Demon pulled her into a kiss that sealed the promise between them. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. When do we leave? Nora asked. Whenever you are ready. Today, tomorrow, next week. There is no rush. Nora thought about it. She had nothing to pack, no belongings worth taking from Silvercrest. Her parents' pendants were already around her neck. Everything else she needed was right here. Today, she decided, I want to start this new life today. No more waiting, no more hiding. I am ready. Demon's smile was brilliant. Then today it is. I will make the arrangements. He stood and offered her his hand. Come, let me show you what your life is going to look like. Let me show you the palace, the territories, the people who are going to love you as much as I do. Nora took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Together they walked out into the sunlight, into the future, into a life Nora had never dared dream of. She was primordial. She was queen. She was loved. And she was finally, truly free. The blood moon had given its blessing. The goddess had restored what was stolen. And Nora Thorne, who had once been nothing more than an invisible Omega standing in the back of the hall, was going to change the world. She just did not know it yet. But she would. Oh, she absolutely would. Because queens do not hide in shadows. They shine. And Nora was ready to blaze brighter than the sun itself.